Okay, we're now live.
Thank you very much. All right, good evening, everyone. This is the regular meeting of the Silverton Board of Trustees on October 26th. The time is 7:02 p.m. and I will call this meeting to order now. Kelly, if you could please do the roll call.
Trustee Barella,
Here.
Trustee Harper,
I see his square.
I do too. And Trustee Wiegert,
Here.
Trustee Bierma,
Here.
Trustee Lashley, Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Here.
Mayor Furman.
Here. Administrator Ryder, would you like to lead the Pledge of Allegiance?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor.
Hello?
Hey, Buster.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, under God, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Do we have any staff or board revisions to the agenda? I'm aware of a few. Administrator Ryder, would you like to run through?
Yes, sir. Maybe you can make sure I don't miss any, Mr. Mayor. We'd like to add Jim Donovan as the first presenter tonight to give us a brief update and status on the ice fire. I would like to add a motion under 5D consent agenda item to accept the 2019 audited financial statements. You'll be hearing a presentation from our audit partner, Lyman Hamblin, so you'll have a chance to hear his presentation, and then we'll motion and seek to approve acceptance of the 2019 audited report. I'd like to add that Ryder will have a staff report, or has added a staff report under the staff report section that was emailed to the board an hour or so ago. I apologize for the late submittal. And I think that is it. And perhaps, Mr. Mayor, we're going to consider to appoint Mayor Pro Tem Barney as a proxy for the Town County Board of Adjustment. I have confirmed with Administrator Tookie in discussion with Director Adair, there are in fact two. There was some confusion whether there was a combined Town County Board. There are confirmed two, so we'd only be confirming or considering to appoint Mayor Pro Tem as proxy for the Town Board of Adjustment.
Got it. So we'd strike the word county in 3C.
Yes, sir.
And did you receive any update on whether or not 3A should remain on the agenda? And will we just decide not to do that based on recommendation, or should we delete that?
Attorney Kosnick advised that we should just vote not to approve that ordinance or that resolution establishing the disaster.
Thank you very much. I've made notes of that on my agenda. Kelly, do you have all of that?
I have it as well.
Okay, well, wonderful. Thank you both. Well, with that, I would just like to start this meeting with a huge thank you to all of the service providers related to the ice fire. What a week. I mean, that was nuts. And I think we saw a phenomenal response from everyone involved. A big thank you to the OEM team, the volunteer fire department, sheriff's office, EMS, school, social services, the Forest Service, CDOT, CAIC, BLM, EPA, Red Cross, La Plata County and City of Durango, Uray County, San Miguel County, Hinsdale County, Dolores County, Montezuma County, as well as all of the town and county staff, all of the business and community members in town that supported the efforts to manage the ice fire, and anyone I may have inadvertently left off. That was a tremendous effort, handled awesomely. Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may request of the board, we are preparing a proclamation that would become kind of an official town board vote. What we do is then that creates a paper that we'd like to put into frames for certain key agencies that participate in something like this as a commemorative way of showing our thanks as well. But I would do that only with board approval.
Thank you. Should we add, why don't we cover that and anything that requires in the staff reports?
Okay.
But thank you for letting me know about that. That sounds great. All right, moving along to public comment. I see that most of our attendees are most likely still over on the county commissioner candidate tonight. I only see 3, but if any of you have a comment you'd like to make, we'll limit comments to 3 minutes and just click the raise your hand button in the bottom of your Zoom screen and we'll promote you to talk. All right, seeing none, we'll move on to new business. So the first item under new business is consideration to adopt resolution 2020-10, resolution of Town of Silverton extending the local disaster emergency declaration for the ice fire. For a quick bit of context, the county adopted an emergency declaration, the town followed suit. The process for the town, similar to the prior emergency declarations we've issued, is to allow the administrator to sign that declaration, and then the town board has 7 days to extend that declaration. And in this case, we've been advised that no extension of that declaration is necessary because of the state of the fire, the weather that came in, and the unlikelihood of needing a further state of emergency. Any context to add there, Administrator Ryder?
Only that, as we discussed earlier, Mayor Furman, we didn't anticipate any post-fire expenses at the town that would have been eligible for state or federal funding in an emergency like this. So there should be no risk there by voting not to approve the extension of this declaration of emergency.
Thank you. Trustees, any discussion, or do I hear a motion to not adopt this resolution? Mayor Pro Tem Barney?
Well, Trustee Harper looks a little concerned, but are you good?
I thought maybe I heard that wrong. We want to adopt a resolution to not. Is that what I heard? The word "not" in there?
We want to vote to not adopt the resolution because we've been advised that no extension of the emergency declaration is necessary.
Thank you.
So
you.
I would make a motion to not adopt the resolution.
And do we have a second?
I can second that.
Thank you much. Thank you, Trustee Birma. Kelly, roll call, please.
Trustee Barella,
Yes.
Trustee Harper,
Yes.
Trustee Weigert,
Yes.
Trustee Birma,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. We move on to the second reading of and consideration to approve ordinance 2020-09, temporary signage. And I won't be offended if you guys turn your video off while I read this. And just a quick clarification. Oh, my apologies. I have the wrong ordinance in front of me. Give me just 1 second. I actually don't believe a copy of this ordinance is in our packet. So I can pull up the last week's packet if you give me 1 second.
I do have it in my
I was gonna say
packet, Mayor, so I'm not sure.
I see it in mine as
Would you like to
well.
take the opportunity to read it?
Are you asking me, Mr. Mayor?
I know I'm scrolling through the digital version I have, and I just have resolution 2020-10, not 2020-09.
I can read it to take the reins on this one.
Okay. Oh, I apologize. Actually, just pulled it up. Sorry, I can read it. Thank you, though. Okay. Ordinance number 2020-09, an ordinance amending certain paragraphs of section 16630 of the Silverton Municipal Code concerning the regulation of temporary signs. Whereas the town of Silverton, Colorado, the town is a statutory town under the laws of the state of Colorado, whereas pursuant to the authority conferred via CRS section 3123-301, the town is empowered to regulate and restrict the use of buildings, structures, and land within its statutory jurisdiction, so long as such restraints are determined necessary to promote the general health, safety, and welfare of the community. Whereas through such authority, the town regulates the use of signs in the town through Article 6 of Chapter 16 of the Silverton Municipal Code, and specifically in Section 16.630, exempts from regulation certain temporary signs. Whereas the town has an interest in regulating signs in order to promote visual harmony and respect for the environmental character of the community, while also enhancing the economy, businesses, and industries by encouraging efficient communication with the public. Whereas the town has a substantial and/or compelling interest in preventing negative impacts associated with temporary signs, which may be degraded, damaged, moved, or destroyed by wind, rain, snow, ice, and sun. And after such degradation, damage, movement, or destruction, such signs harm the safety and aesthetics of the town. Whereas it is the intent of the town to regulate signs in a manner consistent with the First Amendment guarantee of free speech, and it is not the intent of the town to regulate signs based on the content of their messages. Whereas town staff recommends modifying the regulations concerning the use of temporary signs as provided herein, and whereas the Board of Trustees finds and determines that it is in the best interest of the town to modify the regulations concerning the use of temporary signs in order to allow for freedom of speech, provide for the safety of the community, and protect the aesthetics of the town as provided herein. Now therefore be it ordained by the Board of Trustees of the town of Silverton, Colorado. 1. Amendment 1. Chapter 16, Article 6, Section 30, subsection 15 is hereby repealed and replaced with the following. 15. Temporary signs. Temporary signs up to an aggregate area of 12 square feet may be displayed for an unlimited amount of time. An aggregate area of up to 48 square feet is allowed 30 days prior to an election. A temporary sign shall not exceed 12 square feet in area or 6 square feet per side if double-sided and 4 feet in height. Temporary signs include but are not limited to for sale, for rent, or for lease signs, directional signs, political signs, and construction site signs. Temporary signs shall not be illuminated. A minimum of 4 feet of sidewalk width clearance shall be available for pedestrian use. 2. Amendment 2. Chapter 16, Article 6, Section 30, subsection 16, 20, subsections 16, 21, and 24 are hereby deleted in their entirety and shall be reserved. 3. Severability clause. If any section, subsection, sentence, clause, phrase, or word of the ordinance is for any reason held to be invalid or unconstitutional, or its clarity of definition and interpretation of such questions, such decision shall not affect the validity of the remaining portion of this ordinance, and the remainder of this ordinance will remain in force and effect. Definitions contained within this ordinance shall be interpreted and understood as those terms and uses commonly understood within the public realm. 4. Effective date. This ordinance shall take effect and be in force on the 30th day after it has been published, introduced, approved on first reading, and ordered published once in full on this blank day of blank 2020, introduced and adopted on second reading on this blank day of blank 2020. Town of Silverton, Colorado, signed by Shane Furman, Mayor, and attested to by Kelly Freeze, Town Clerk. I also note that we received a memo from Attorney Kosnick with the feedback from his research related to a citizen comment inquiring about the constitutionality of these revisions, where Attorney Kosnick said that he was not aware of any case law stating that these revisions were unconstitutional. And all trustees did receive that memo, to my knowledge. Trustee Barella?
Well, I do believe that all the due diligence has been done by staff to make sure that this is all on the up and up. And it's good to see all the I's dotted and the T's crossed. So I'm very glad that it went that step further. I'm glad it was drawn to our attention by the public and everything was re-verified. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Barella. Any other discussion, or do I hear a motion to approve ordinance 2020-09 relating to temporary signage?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Trustee Harper?
Yes, sir.
That's your second?
Yes, sir, I apologize.
Okay, thank you. So trustee Barella made the motion, trustee Harper seconded. Kelly, roll call, please.
Trustee Barella,
Yes.
trustee Harper,
Yes,
trustee Wager,
Yes.
trustee Bearmont,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is consideration to appoint Mayor Pro Tem Barney as proxy for the Town Board of Adjustment. Context here is that Planner Adair noted that we were supposed to have a proxy appointed in the event that either trustee Lashley or myself, who are the appointed members of the Board of Adjustment, in the event of our absence, someone would stand in for us. And Mayor Pro Tem Barney is suggested as that proxy.
And to add, I think there was also a consideration that you can't also be on something else.
I believe that it can't be another member of the Planning Commission.
That is correct.
Okay, I'll
Any
make,
discussion? I'm sorry?
I was gonna make a motion
Oh,
to
thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney to the Board of Adjustments.
Thank you. Is this Administrator Ryder something you think we need roll call for? Or do we all just acknowledge that we're in favor of this, similar to other committee appointments?
I would do a roll call just to be safe.
Sure thing. Do I hear a second?
I can second it.
All right,
And
thank
do
you.
I vote in this one?
I think you do not. Thank you, Trustee Verma, for the second. Trustee Barella for making the motion. Kelly, roll call, please.
Trustee Barella,
Yes.
trustee Harper,
yes,
trustee Wager,
Yes.
trustee Bearmont,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Recusing.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. Thank you very much. Moving to the next item, consideration to give a contribution of $5,000 to ski touring for operating funds plus course building. And we did have a letter in our packet. Administrator Ryder, did you have any other context or anyone else want to speak to this request?
If it pleases the board, Todd Bove is on the panel and can speak to the importance of ski joring. I would only say from my perspective, it's an outstanding event. It draws thousands and thousands and thousands of people to Silverton. Will understand that that could be affected by COVID this year, but it's a wonderfully run event. I would propose the board give strong consideration. With that being said, we are receiving numerous requests for financial support in the budget. This is one, however, we've traditionally supported in the past, and in fact gave $5,000 last year. But in this particular case, the number of people it draws, restaurants are packed, the street is packed. It's a really wonderful winter showcase for the town of Silverton.
Thank you. Todd, would you like to give us a little more?
Sure. So I think John summarized it really well. It's been a great event for us over the years. This request from ski touring is in line with previous years, so no change there. I did speak with Karen earlier or towards the end of last week, and I did want to just explain that in the event that there is no ski touring, if something were to happen with COVID or unforeseen circumstances, I think that the money would, I know that the money would come back to the town or go unexpended, or Karen asked that maybe it be rolled over to next year when there could be an event. So I did just want to speak to, if there is no event, the town will not be on the hook for the money. The only upfront expense is really the insurance payment, and I believe ski touring as a organization can cover that upfront cost. So this would really be funding dependent on having and running the event.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Todd or Administrator Ryder or other discussion? Trustee Wiegert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would only say that this is an event that's a huge boost to the economy of Silverton, typically in a time when it's normally slow here. This is something we've historically supported in the past. Ski joring actually has quite a history in Colorado, dating back all the way competitions in the 70s. You know, I think this is a great event for the town and I have no problem supporting it. I do think this is something that we should consider on a year-to-year basis though, as far as the rolling over with the $5,000 in the event that this doesn't happen. I think it'd be prudent for every new board to address the issue if the time comes.
Thank you very much.
If I may, I support Trustee Wiegert's position on this, and it should probably, have some type of a contractual arrangement that if the event is in fact canceled, the money's returned. If the event's canceled, town's going to be in some state of economic, crisis once again, because it probably means COVID has come back and not allow us to do this great event. But I think we make a caveat that the money comes back if the event's canceled. Or even, and as an alternative, reduced if there's a major restriction on who can attend the event.
Thank you, Lisa, and then Trustee Barella.
Just very quickly, I'd like to note for reference for the trustees, we haven't actually received event paperwork from Ski Joring yet. But as with every special event, we'll be going through the typical application process. We'll have them, of course, work with the Office of Emergency Management on COVID safety planning. We're still pretty far out from the event. We're looking at generally a 60-day window that we're asking people to submit their paperwork within. So they're still in good shape as far as that goes, but I just wanted to explain there's no paperwork accompanying this yet. And that will be forthcoming once we receive it from them.
Thank you. Trustee Barella.
So I'm going to go back to what I have had my mantra for quite some time, that with all of these regular events that come every year, we need to have contracts in place. So that way it's done, it's a done deal. We know what to already expect. We held that standard for the 4th of July Association, of which we created a contract that was very well gone over by 2 different attorneys, including, the town's own, and it came up to a very amicable contract for, future events. So we already know what we're doing. We've got everything within that scope. So I would like to see ski joring done the same way. So that way, when the ask comes, it's just in the consent agenda and it's contractual that the money is returned and so on. Just like the 4th of July didn't take any money this year because we didn't have one. So I think going forward, this is the best practice that we could put into place for any event that is regularly scheduled, even if it's every 4 years. We already know it's coming. It's no surprise. The asks are already there. So I really hope everybody supports this and we can get a contract in place. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a really great suggestion. Welcome, Trustee Lashley. I hope the rest of the candidates tonight went well for everyone. Trustee Birma, you have your hand up?
Fully support ski joring. Just curious what that $5,000 is usually used for, especially on a year like this year, because if some of that fund's going towards like COVID regulations, I didn't know if we could use other funds from COVID relief funding to use for that.
That's a great question. Todd, did you have, I saw your video pop back on. Did you have a response for Trustee Birma?
Sure. It's mainly used to offset heavy equipment expenses, some of which is donated by the town, some of which is paid for by the ski joring organization. Supports course building, and the other expenses surrounding the event, porta potties, et cetera, down payment, stuff like that. I think it's generally, it costs us around, if I'm not mistaken, around $15,000 to put on the event. So we rely heavily on donations. Karen does a lot of individual fundraising as well. And it takes a whole community to really put the event on. But to answer your question more directly, it mainly goes towards course building and equipment expenses.
Thank you. So hearing all of the different pieces of feedback, would it be prudent to generally express our support of this request, but to hold on approving it or voting on it until we have the contract to review, so that we can make sure that everything is all set up, following Trustee Barella's suggestion? Trustee Harper?
Thank you, sir. The only thing I would add to that is in budgeting the funds, we should budget this 5,000 ahead of time so it doesn't jump up and creep on us later on in the year. So we have to come up with 5G. I believe I sit on the board, so obviously I will recuse myself when the time comes. But this is a big event. This is the 4th of July of the winter. 3-4 days, restaurants, hotels, everything's full. Money is used for a little bit of everything from grooming to marketing. But I do believe that we as a board, we as a town should at least have a line item for that 5,000 on the books marked so that it doesn't creep up on us and we don't get surprised by this. But
Thank you very
in saying that, we shouldn't be distributing cash or funds of any kind until paperwork is properly submitted.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Administrator Ryder, does that sound good to you?
I think all of that is an excellent suggestion. And with permission, I work with Trustee Burrell and of course Attorney Kosnick to make sure we get all the right details in the contract. It shouldn't be complicated, but make sure we cover the provisions, particularly, return of money should something go wrong with the event.
Great. So I've heard unanimous, it seems, subject to the last couple of people weighing in, support for this event. But for now, we will table this issue subject to the inclusion of this line item in the budget and seeing a contract prepared. Any objections to that? Mayor Pro Tem Barney?
No objection. I just hadn't really expressed anything. So I just wanted to express my support for the event. I think it's, like everyone has said, highly beneficial and a real enjoyment for people who live here and our visitors. And it seems like a good fit if we have to all be outside recreating and being entertained.
Thank you. Trustee Wiegert, did I see your hand go up?
Just wanted to note that normally I think this a table would require a motion.
Do we have a motion to table this item?
Also move.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thanks, Trustee Lashley. Kelly, roll call, please.
Trustee Barella,
Yes.
Trustee Harper,
Sure. Yes.
Trustee Wiegert,
Yes.
Trustee Beerwell,
Yes.
Trustee Lashley,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. Thank you all. Moving along to new business item E, consideration to renew the contract with Durango Dog Ranch for the 2020-2021 season. Administrator Ryder or Todd, would you like to provide the background here?
I will start by just saying this is an operation down at Mullis Lake that is popular and has been done some 15 years. This is a carry forward of the contract and contract language from prior years, including last year. There is a typo I noted that as I went back, it appears to have been a typo in many versions of this contract, but in, let's see, page 2, paragraph 8, license fees. There's a notation, the town gets 6% of gross revenues as a result of these operations. And on or before June 1, 2020, it currently says 2017, that should be changed to 2020 for the season by the end of May 2021, but that is the only change I noted in the contract. And we'll make that change upon approval.
Should that be 2021?
It's actually going to be June 20 and carry through winter into May 21. I don't know why June 1, it's been the date for years as the starting. It probably should read something like November 1, just in case they started really early or something. November 1, June seemed a little aggressive for a start of the year, but it should start in 2020. Yeah, you're correct, Mayor Furman. I would suggest November 1st or November 15th, something like that of 2020, and then May to the following year to account for the winter season.
Okay, just to further clarify, it says that they will pay on or before this date 6% of the gross revenue as a result of the operation. So aren't we saying for this contract that they will pay at the end of their season 2021?
As of June 2021.
Cool. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Good catch.
Any discussion or questions? Mayor Pro Tem Barney?
Is this something that our town attorney reviews or needs to or has reviewed?
As in the past, I talked to Paul. He did not. I was not asked to review it again this year since it was a carry forward, but we certainly could have him do that prior to execution.
Thank you. I had just one request that he look at the termination section and see whether or not we should have some other basis for termination if things were maybe not to the town's liking or not going well, instead of only being able to terminate for a default on the contract. I see Kelly's hand.
I did give it to Paul Kosnick. He did look it over and he said he didn't have any issues with it.
Thank you. In that case, I would just see if you wouldn't mind passing on my one question.
Mr. Kosnick indicated a little differently today, but at any rate, we'll have him look at it again specific to the termination clause before execution.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Do we have has anyone done this? Are we familiar with the scope of Trustee Lashley, I see. Thank you.
Sure. Just if we have questions relating to our attorney's advice, should we wait and table this as well to wait for the response?
Trustee Lashley, I would propose that if there's no significant change, we don't have to bring it back. But if we could motion with condition, if there's a significant change as a result of the attorney review, we bring it back to the board for an additional approval or additional consideration to approve.
Sounds good to me then.
In the past, how much revenue has this generated for the town with the 6% fee?
I knew you were going to ask that, and I do not have the answer at my fingertips. I'd have to get back to you on that one.
Trustee Lashley?
Thank you. The dog sledding thing, I think, is kind of a fickle weather event, and I think that there were a couple years where, in the beginning for this, these folks had a really hard time getting going. So I don't know how well we could compare kind of past year revenues for this, considering the kind of problems and troubles that they've had. But I do generally support the dog ranch operating this and trying to kind of bring a whole different demographic and a new activity to our area.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have a specific account line item that I could get to quickly. So, but I can get a history just to give you a sense of volume and money generated.
Thank you. And then the only other item I had is, should we see a copy of their license to operate issued by the special use permit issued by the government in connection with approving this agreement, which is referenced in section 9, I believe. Or I'm sorry, it's section 3C. There's a permit for a number of service days from the BLM and USDA Forest Service.
Yeah, insurance I'm okay with. We'll get certificates on that as a matter of course. But I just thought I saw something on the licensee. Because I think that may be a good request if it's not in here.
I was looking down at the contract and looking up, I see multiple hands, Trustee Barella, and then Lisa. I apologize if that's not the order that they went up. Trustee Barella.
I would actually like to hear from Lisa because I think that's something that staff usually gets.
Okay, thank you. Lisa?
So I just wanted to clarify, Greg Dubit is the operator of Durango Dog Ranch and does this dog sledding contract with the town at Mullis, which is separate from the flying dog sled race. And I just want to make sure the trustees understand those are two distinct things. Although Greg does play a major role in the flying dog sled races and volunteers his time for that. So I just wanted to clarify that so that especially some of our newer trustees could understand the distinction there.
Thank you. So to recap, I raised a question about the termination provision for Attorney Kosnick, which Administrator Ryder recommended was okay for us to approve, subject to there being a material amendment suggested by Attorney Kosnick. And then I was just curious what the trustees thought about making sure that the town received a copy of the permit from the BLM and Forest Service. Mayor Pro Tem Barney?
I think it would be prudent for us to receive a copy of that.
And to clarify, I mean town, not necessarily us. Trustee Lashley?
Sure. I think we're getting close to wording a motion here. Just that I'd like to approve the consideration to renew the contract with Durango Dog Ranch for the 2021 season with the approval of our attorney regarding contract provisions, and also receiving a copy of the BLM permit that's referenced in section 9 of the contract.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Barella.
And if I may amend that just a bit, it's actually section 3 that I'm looking at quickly here to see. This is where the licensee is permitted to operate out of Mullis, and the Bureau of Land Management and or U.S. Forest Service special use permit. So I think it's 3A that we're interested in obtaining copies of. And I've read through it quickly to see if we had already had some provision buried in here that permit or licensee shall provide a copy of said permits, and I don't see it. So I think it's a good add. And we can, I think if you can amend, or I can amend the motion to just say the provisions or the license and the permitted services as obtained.
I think Austin, Trustee Lashley had it more generally without a bad cross reference. So I think we're good as is with Trustee Lashley's motion and Trustee Barella's second, unless I misheard. Anyone else have a different take?
Sure.
Okay,
I think we can say it without a section at all. We can just say copy of the permit to operate in BLM and Forest Service.
Good. Great.
Okay.
Thank you all. Kelly, roll call, please.
Seconded, please.
Trustee Barella.
Trustee Barella?
Yes.
Trustee Harper?
Yes.
Trustee Weigert?
Yes.
Trustee Beerma?
Yes.
Trustee Lashley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney?
Yes.
Mayor Furman?
Yes. Thank you very much. Moving along to presentations and proclamations, as revised earlier by Administrator Ryder, Jim Donovan from our OEM team will provide a brief recap of the ice fire incident. Jim, the floor is yours.
All right, thanks and good evening, everyone. Jim Donovan, Emergency Manager. Just wanted to give you guys a summary just on the ice fire and the that incident. It started last week, last Monday. Last Monday looked a very, very different than today. The total acreage was 596. We have turned it over to a Type 4 team. The U.S. Forest Service Type 3 team turned it over to a Type 4 team, which is actually just one person who's down in Bayfield for the Forest Service, and he is staying in touch with us on conditions. As of yesterday, it was 90% contained. There were over 100 personnel on the fire and multiple aircraft. And then just as a kind of a reminder, 1 week ago, we did have a serious search and rescue operation that evacuated 23 people and 3 dogs from the Ice Lakes area with 2 helicopters involved. So rather dramatic situation last week. Also, half the town was out of internet. So that was another thing just important to note. The town did go into a ready stage for a potential total evacuation that we put the town on ready stage out of our 3 stages of ready, set, go on last Tuesday. And all of this was being done while the Forest Service incident management team was practicing COVID precautions. So everybody was social distancing and wearing masks. I do want to just do a big shout out to the town hall staff for adapting really quickly and allowing the both the team to utilize town hall. That just made it communication, everything very effective. And then also the fire department for providing really a lot of their space, just opening their doors, welcoming the wildland firefighters to really help us out. We will do a debrief just on the town and county side of how this whole incident played out. Overall, considering how many challenges we had up front, it actually went really, really well. We did do a debrief with the incident management team on Sunday, and we're able to make some good notes on that. Some of the good products out of it, with the PIO, Public Information Officer with the Forest Service, he produced a really great emergency preparedness video for us. So we will be using that on social media. I'll share it with Lisa Brainer. Even having it on the town website would be great, because I think it really helps people understand that these things can happen. They can happen really quickly, and it's just really important for our citizens to have a plan. We've also been, we really, I think, improved quite a bit on outreach to the Hispanic community. We were able to get some translation of almost all the press releases and also the public alerts, which is really, we're hoping that plays out, and also plays out kind of with all of the COVID stuff. I know that's a rapid fire update. I also just wanted to be available to answer any questions, and just a big shout out once again to town staff for helping out so much with this incident. Thanks.
Thank you very, very much.
I don't know if this is the appropriate time. You had mentioned that there were some thank you videos being produced on Sunday.
Yeah, we threw it out there. People on you know, if any town of Silverton folks want to just do a shout out to the incident management team, the Type 3 team, and the firefighters, and all the first responders, that would be great. Even just a thank you on the just typing in comments is great as well.
Thank you. Trustee Lashley?
Thank you, Mayor Furman. I just wanted to say, especially to you, Mr. Donovan, thank you so much for your strong efforts and strong showing for the Office of Emergency Management on this one. It's really great to see how far that the OEM team has come in responding to incidents like this, from the earlier incident that we had in the 416 fire, which I think kind of was something that was a little new for us. And we had kind of one conversation about ways to improve communication and all that. And we really did see it here just really come together. So I just want to applaud you and the rest of the Office of Emergency Management team and all of our emergency services for really having come together, because when this incident came around, again, I really do feel like we made huge strides in responding to this crisis that was much closer to home than the 416 fire was.
Yep. Thanks, Austin. Yeah, this definitely, I think it was a big wake up call for everyone, given this time of year, and how close it was, having to actually put the town on basically a pre-evacuation notice. I never would have thought for a wildfire in October. So yeah, but thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Jim.
Great. Yep. Thank you all. And we'll see you later.
All right. Next thing on the agenda, and just to confirm, we weren't going to flip flop community builders and the audited financial statement. Administrator Ryder, the intention is to move to community builders next.
Yes.
Okay, great. Anthony Edwards will be presenting the community builders proposal that we received a written copy of recently, but did not make it in our board packet. So perhaps that can be included in the next board packet so the public has the opportunity to see it as well. Anthony, you're muted.
Thank you. Maybe somebody wanted that to happen. Who knows? Anyway, so I'll just tee this up really quick. Actually, Clark Anderson is with us tonight. He knows that you are on a long night, and we will we'll move through it briefly. I believe he got a few slides to go through earlier today. The idea was that we could go through a process, build some teams, and have a community visioning process with community engagement. It's a multi-step plan, and I thought that it went out after the agenda went out, but I guess it did not, apparently. But in a moment, Clark will come here just to recap last summer, or not last summer, but the summer before. We had a community builders meeting. A lot of the community came out, a really diverse group of the community. And we had two trustees that are here now. Molly and Jim were both there. If either of you want to weigh in, please do. I thought it was a fairly great engagement between the community at that time, and hoping to get back on track. The monies, just so everybody knows, the monies that are invested in this are coming from brownfields and the state monies that are going, and this process would be driven by the town and the county. But we're coming to the town first because we want to make sure that the town gets out of this what they want before we expand into the county and we get everything. So with that said, I'm going to text Clark. I think he's putting his little girls to bed right now. Let me ask Lisa, did Clark, did he have some slides he wanted to put up while he was talking by chance?
He did not forward any slides to me, but when he joins us, he does have permission to screen share.
Okay, that sounds good. I think that he'll be here in just a moment. Are there any questions until Clark is on about this? Did anybody get the visioning document from community builders? Okay,
all the trustees should have received a copy.
Okay, that's great. I just wanted to make sure that it was received. I thought I heard that it was not.
It was received through a separate email than our board packet. I was just noting that it wasn't in the board packet, so it wasn't something that was distributed to the public.
Okay, this is Clark, and welcome, Clark. And Clark, would you like to, did you have slides that you wanted to share as you go forward?
I do, but if you want to kind of tee things up, I can start doing that. Get the share screen going.
Sure. I just informed everybody, Clark, that we had worked a couple of summers ago. There's a couple of trustees here that were involved in that, and it was a great group of the community. This is a visioning and a planning process that Community Builders has worked with many communities. Do you want to identify some of the communities you've worked with before, Clark, just so people have an idea of the diverse type of economies you've worked with in the past?
Sure, and I'll dive more into that, but I'll just say, we work places all around the Mountain West. We're just wrapping up projects in Hamilton, Montana, Laramie, Wyoming. Where else? We're working in Ignacio right now, Taos, New Mexico. Sort of the full range of communities that make up the fabric of the American West. Our primary work takes place in Colorado, New Mexico, Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana, so the Rocky Mountain states in particular. And again, I'll provide a little bit more background, as is the case usually these days. I'm having technical difficulties getting my screen to share, so worst case scenario, I'll just talk through it. But yeah, that's and so I'll dive a little bit more into that as we go. Anthony, do you want to provide any more just in terms of will not be able to record the so it says Zoom will not be able to record the contents of your screen until it's quit. Quit now. Cancel. I'm not going to do that. You guys, what I'm going to do, just because it's not letting me share, and it's probably something on my side, although I'm not sure we use Zoom a lot. If it works for you guys, is it okay for me just to kind of talk through these things?
Sure.
Great. What I was going to, and you guys have the concept that I passed along to Anthony, right?
We do.
Great. Yeah. So let's just begin, with a little bit of background. As Anthony mentioned, we came to Silverton, a little over maybe a year and a half ago. And we came there with support actually from a program that we do through the state called the Colorado Brownfields Outreach Program. And what that lets us do is go in and work with communities that are dealing with the cleanup and reuse of different types of brownfields properties. So things that either do or are perceived to have some type of contamination. And we came in and worked with you guys to organize a workshop that could really try to have a conversation about where you guys are today and what some of the challenges and opportunities you guys are facing are, and ultimately where you wanted to go moving forward as a community. And we had a great conversation with the folks that were able to participate. It was a pretty good sized group, and really got well beyond the scope of just talking about brownfields redevelopment work to talking about the future of Silverton and, how are you guys as a mountain community that's experiencing change economically, demographically, and increasingly now in sort of COVID times, obviously feeling a lot of the growth pressure that a lot of communities are feeling. How do you go through those changes in ways that are directed and intentional and take you where you actually want to be? And my experience was that we had some pretty substantive conversations. Certainly not everybody agreed. But I think it was for just basically a half-day workshop, 3/4 of a day workshop. We hit some pretty interesting elements of sort of a discussion around where you guys are and where you're headed as a community. And in follow-up to that, I had a couple conversations with Anthony and other folks, some Willie with the county, just about, do you guys help communities in a deeper way than just sort of a day-long workshop like that to explore some of these things? And we do. So that's sort of how we got here. And what I was planning to present in terms of the slides was sort of a walkthrough of a concept that we put together in talking in those conversations about how we might be able to support you guys right now. And before I jump into that, let me just say a little bit about who we are. Community Builders is a nonprofit. We're based here in Glenwood Springs. That's where I'm sitting now. And I've got kids. I got a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old that could dart into this room at any minute. So let's just hope that they don't. Because mom is busy tonight too. So they're just like taking over the house. So we're based in Glenwood Springs. We've got a small team of people who really, our job is to go around and help communities think about and understand where they are and where they want to be, and give them the tools and resources and supports they need to actually get there. So we provide training. That's sort of like the workshop we did with you guys. We also do much more intensive multi-day trainings that are focused on developing local leadership and helping communities build teams that can move them from sort of point A where they are to where they want to be. We also do technical assistance, and that type of technical assistance can be many months, over a year, and usually we're diving pretty deeply into some mix of issues around housing, economic development, community planning for growth, transportation systems, all of the sort of things that make up the kind of physical bricks and mortar bones of your community, but all of them mix together a more human component of civic health and capacity. All of our work is rooted in helping communities develop that civic infrastructure that you need to be able to actually make progress. And that's just kind of hard knocks lessons that we learned over the years, which is that the places where we've done work and it's been successful, there was a fundamental focus and intent around the people side of it. And how do we come in as a nonprofit organization intending to support a community in ways that are useful? And what we learned is you really have to work with communities on not just the sort of bricks and mortar problem solving, but how do we work together better as a community to overcome our challenges and realize our opportunities. So all the stuff we do mixes that stuff into it. We have an opportunity through our Brownfields program that I mentioned with the state to work with you guys a bit if you want. Depends a little bit on where you guys are. And so, I think Anthony and myself have had some conversations around what this might look like. And we want to just kind of toss it out there in front of you guys tonight and see what you think. We sort of organize this around a pretty typical visioning framework. And that framework, I'm going to pull up my own notes just so that I'm looking at it. Goes through a couple different layers. We think it's really important to begin with just a fundamental understanding of where the community is. We call this groundwork. And, even before the understanding where we are, we talk about groundwork. And this is a step that a lot of communities skip. And, but we find that for successful projects, it really matters. And this is where you, as a team, come together. So we would work with whichever community we're engaged with and talk about what's it going to take, what do we need to create in terms of teams, partnerships, management systems, communications, engagement strategies for this project to be successful. It's all the stuff you need to do before the project actually launches. And it's the kind of stuff we all forget about because we all want to get to the exciting, tactical work, but it really lays the foundation for a successful project. After that, we move into a more sort of evaluative space of understanding where we are today. And this is a stage where you can kind of understand what the current conditions are, both from a qualitative side and a quantitative side. And the point is just to build a foundation of understanding around where the community is and where it's likely headed to be able to transition into the next stage, which is much more future oriented and asking, all right, so if this is where we are, where do we actually want to be? What's the future we want to create? And this is work that's oriented around setting goals and high-level vision and high-level strategy. And again, it builds on that more assessment level work of understanding kind of what's going on today, what are our needs and priorities. And all of that transitions to a next stage, which is around, okay, well, how do we actually get there? Strategically, what are the strategies and actions we need to commit to be able to move this type of work forward? We sometimes have a follow-up sort of stage after that we call implementation and stewardship. And the simple way to think about that is that's sort of the work that you do to keep the plan off the shelf. It's the way that you figure out how to take the momentum that you got out of the project and make sure it sticks. And also all that, the team development that you did, the engagement that you did, how do you think about, how do we sustain this moving forward? And so that's sort of that implementation and stewardship part for you guys, knowing that you guys have a lot going on and there's a lot to do. I kind of integrated that implementation and stewardship work into your sort of strategies and actions activity. So I know you guys have the concept. If it's useful to go into any more detail, I can do that on a per activity basis. And especially for those who don't have the document and maybe are in the public, and if that would be useful for you guys, I can just quickly walk through those. Again, I really apologize. I'm not sure why my computer won't allow me to share the screen. We do this all the time. I can't for some reason. So do you guys want me to do that, or is that a high level good enough?
Clark, I just want to point a couple things. I saw some thumbs up, and I know there's time constraints this evening, but I do want to point out in part 3, the activities, something that I've heard at the county meetings on the street, as well as in the town board meetings. In part 3, it talks about community engagement, broad community engagement, and engaging both physically in person, socially distanced, and being here and not just being on Zoom. So I just wanted to, I know that's some things that we've talked about and that's in the plan, and I appreciate Clark putting that in and making sure that they would, and separate communication channels as well. Using communication channels that includes one-on-one and talking to individuals and meeting with people in the community, some who are not, or some who are without all the technology that others of us have, so to speak. So
it looks like it decided to work. Is that right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Now that we're done, right?
Yeah. So we're done. Just so you guys can see it, maybe a little bit more about our team, because I thought it was fun to put the pictures together. This is our crew in different settings. We're pretty fun to work with. We work really hard too. And I think what we're best at is responding to what our partners' needs are and helping them find their way forward. So yeah, if there's any questions specifically, I'm happy to run through any of the specific activities. It's this, here the different pieces are. For the folks that don't have the PDF, I'll just kind of flick through these and then let me know what you guys want to do. That third activity around goals and vision, and then moving into strategies and action plans. So I'll stop there and see if you guys have any questions or discussion or any, yeah, just kind of where you guys are on this.
Well, thank you very much, Clark. This is super helpful. And thank you, Anthony, for bringing this to our attention. I see I'm having to scroll through since we're in screen share mode. I see Trustee Harper's hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just didn't know, do you have the map available to show everybody?
That one that was on the PDF?
Yes, sir.
Let me see if I can find it here real quick. Let's see if it still shows. You guys see this?
No.
There.
We're seeing the strategies and action planning activity 4 slide.
Okay, it's still there. Yeah, I think when I switch over to different windows, it doesn't come back. So, yeah, it's I could share it with you if I can switch back out and come back in. But that map was something we produced from that workshop that I mentioned.
My only thought was that the map would be extremely useful for folks that are tuning in at home to show what we did work on that day. The old mayor, I shouldn't say the old mayor, Mayor Tukey was there. There it is.
Nice.
She was in our group, and we had a great brainstorming session. We had 6 breakout teams, and we worked on different facets, and we did kind of a round robin per topic per table, and it was great. It was fantastic.
I'm glad you liked that. Yeah, that was a fun day. We had a lot of energy.
Good.
Any other questions from you guys in terms of, maybe where and how this plugs in? I know you guys have a lot going on.
I had a question. I know it's hard to see the hands. Mayor Furman.
Thanks, Sally. Thank you, Pro Tem Barney.
So yes, thanks, Clark. I think this is a great presentation, and I appreciate, Anthony, that you're linking us all together. I think that's just so beneficial for making progress when we have these connections and we can see the overlay of everybody's work. And my question is sort of related to that. I do know that we have, or it seems to me that we have quite a bit going on in our community in terms of strategic planning and community engagement. And I'm wondering if the role of community builders, if you can describe, like, does community builders attend, master planning committee meetings? Does it come to Kendall meetings? Does it serve as a, can we reach out to you as experts? I'm just trying to get a sense of the role of community builders and how you intertwine with our other kind of current local initiatives.
That's a great question. And, I'll at least offer some thoughts from my view. We can do a number of things that I think would be most useful. We can provide content expertise. Yes, we can support on engagement. What I think would make sense if you guys decide you want to do this, knowing that you guys have this master planning work going, is to sit down and sort of think about how do we align the scopes of the different things you're trying to do and maybe plug it into a broader visioning framework. I think the goal would probably be to say, we've got all these different things going, and how do we make sure that they're all rooted and moving towards a core idea or set of ideas, and provide the engagement around that. I think, one of the things that we do specialize in is engagement, and doing that in a way that's inclusive and fun. And right now that's hard, it's hard to do. And so it's just an area to bring in some additional capacity. The way we do tend to do it, I'd say, is we both bring capacity and we try to build capacity. So part of what we do is, sort of add some just people power to your crew, your team that's doing civic community engagement around these issues. I think the other thing we do is provide you guys with a mix of sort of strategic and tactical support around, like, okay, what are some things we can do for our own engagement efforts that maybe community builders doesn't have to show up for, but we can just, it'll help support this effort, all of these efforts, and maybe look for areas of alignment. It's hard when you have those going on. Actually, I'm doing a project in Eagle County right now that in some ways is similar. They originally called out to us about support on economic recovery, and then they also want to do some work around some social inclusion and equity work they're doing. They're also working on a housing plan, and now they're also starting a comprehensive plan. And so what they ultimately decided to do is kind of use the visioning work that we're doing with them as the guide stone for sort of the whole thing. And all of those are now kind of rooted into that trunk process, and then they branch out and do their own work at certain points. And that may or may not be the right framework for you guys to think about, but I think the key thing would be to sit down, if this makes sense, or even if we're not sure if it makes sense, but we want to sort of explore it a little bit more and kind of talk through in a tactical way, like how would we actually plug these things together in a way that they're supportive and not confusing? Because what you probably don't want to do is have so many different things going on that nobody's really sure what it's all connected to. And just to add one more thing onto the list without having it be that route would probably be challenging and maybe not beneficial.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I'd just love to quickly hear, staff perspective, Administrator Ryder, Lisa Branner, Lisa Adair, and others who this impacts or supports. What's your take, and you recommend, and does this help you?
I've met with Mr. Anderson and reviewed the presentation that they did the year and a half or so ago. And the conclusion I've over and over drawn is this is a terrific group that has a really unique and strong ability, as Clark mentioned, to engage and get people to participate. Not only that, but in a really positive way, and to really identify the synergies between different groups and different projects in different areas of town, and perhaps competing variables within towns, be it opinion or political. So I really support this. I know Anthony's been working on this for quite some time to get community builders back engaged. And for one, I'm thrilled. I was not there physically. I hadn't joined town yet when the group met the first time. But of all things I encountered in my first several months and talking, how do we get this going? How do we get this started? I'm overwhelmed with 1,000 projects and 1,000 priorities. And it kept coming back. Almost everybody leaned to, we got to get those guys back, because that was one of the most productive sessions with all kinds of people from town at all different businesses and positions in towns, et cetera. And the overriding, almost unanimous, in fact, I would say unanimous consensus was that was one heck of a meeting and one heck of a jumpstart. How do we keep going? And so I would fully support this from my perspective.
Thank you. Lisa?
Yeah, if I could add to that, I was present at the Brownfields workshop, and I feel like Clark and his team just hit it out of the ballpark as far as taking all of the diverse perspectives and input that they were hearing and generating something that was really reflective of where our community was at that moment. And, one of the things that I've been hearing a lot recently in the recovery team meetings that I've been participating in is a concern about making sure that we have kind of the overarching umbrella vision for the community. There's a lot of work being done in different areas, but what is the common thread that's tying it or weaving it all together? And I think that that's what Clark and his team has the potential to help us with, is figuring out that overarching vision that all of these other pieces fit into. And so I'd be very excited to have them come work with the community again. I think they could really offer a lot and help, like I said, weave all those pieces together.
Thank you. And Lisa Adair, I saw you jump into the participant panel. Did you want to speak as well?
Yes, I agree with what John Ryder and Lisa Branner just said. I heard Clark's presentation last year. I thought it was wonderful, and it showed how much experience his outfit has for helping communities like ours. I think we have a lot of irons in the fire, and Clark's work would help us prioritize what's most important to the community. So I'm in support of using his services to help us figure out how to prioritize and pull all these separate important projects together.
Thank you very much. The endorsement doesn't become more solid than all of that so far. Trustees, any other questions or comments? Well, in that case, Clark, thank you so very much for presenting. It sounds like we will be looking to figure out what next steps are. Anthony, thank you so much for coordinating. And any other action needed by the board or questions for us before we move to the next item?
I think I would just ask, Clark will go to the county as well, although we talked just a moment ago about the town, really, that's where the important work is needs to be done and where we want to focus the funds at this time until, or as we go forward. Is the board in general, I don't think we need a vote, official vote, or formal vote, but is everybody okay with Clark moving forward and presenting to the town and the county and setting forth a course? Is just a thumbs up, maybe, if we're all
Sounds
good?
Thank you.
Great. Thanks,
Awesome.
everybody. And thanks, Clark. I know it was, I know you were managing a couple of young kids, and good job.
They amazingly disappeared for a little while, so it makes me a little nervous, but
They may be down the neighborhood, right?
that's right. That's
There's
right.
a mess somewhere in your house.
For sure.
Again, I see Lisa Branner has her hand up, and then Trustee Brella.
We've got Mark Rudolph from CDPHE on as a attendee, and he's raised his hand. And Mark you may want to let Mark weigh in on this because he was involved as well in the last brownfields.
He's actually secured the money for us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and promote him to panelist just so he can weigh in.
You there, Mark?
But I'm just going to put it into perspective that the original Brownsfield was scheduled for March, and due to the heavy snowfall, it got moved to May 31st of 2019. I just went back and pulled up my synopsis of the Brownfields workshop from Sierra Jeter. So just so everybody.
I'll make it really quick in the spirit of timeliness. But anyway, I support everything that's going on there. I think this is fantastic. I think you guys are going in the right direction, and our Brownfields program and our Superfund program are here to try to make all these things happen. Clearly within reason, we'll do whatever we can do. But anyway, Clark's got my full support, as do you guys. So let us know what we can do to help you guys.
Thank you very much.
And that's it.
Thanks, Mark.
On the side
you,
of, just a quick addition to that, I think it's really important that, the sort of foundational funding that they're providing to get this started is really important. We'll want to look at where we get to scope wise and talk about budget. And if we need to, we can help you guys try to raise some additional funding. I know COVID hasn't been awesome for most people's fiscal situation. But I think there's probably areas we can look at if we need to in terms of DOLA or whatnot to potentially find additional support if there's a gap. And I don't know that there will be, but I feel like it's, with the foundational sort of money to get going and everything from Mark and the state, it's really great. You guys have a good start. So I'm really looking forward to working with you guys. Our team is to Bud Timshizin, who will be the lead on this. Wasn't here today, but he just a wonderful guy, and we're gonna really enjoy working with you guys.
Well, thank you all very, very much. Speaking of the fiscal situation, what a good segue. Our next item on the agenda is the presentation of the 2019 audited financial statements.
If I may make the introduction of Lyman Hamlin. He's a partner in Hamlin & Associates, who have been our auditors for quite some time. I just emailed all of you the full boat audited financials. I think you'll get far more out of Lyman's presentation. To be completely honest, and as a former CPA, government accounting and the presentation of financial statements in that context can be quite confusing and probably don't look anything like the normal financial statements you see on a monthly basis out of town hall staff. But I'm sure he can walk you through it. Lyman, I would also ask you to just touch briefly on the fund. In Trustee Lashley's, in response to his question at the work session, we looked at some of the fund reorganization and asked Lyman to comment on that. We're going to do a little more research. There's not a lot of wiggle room there. There is some creates an advantage, some doesn't, but just to let you know, we did research that question. I'd also like to thank Lyman's staff, Scott McClure, who came out into the field during COVID. Very cooperative to work with, and great guy doing the real groundwork of getting through one of these audits, and appreciate his work and all of Lyman's staff work in getting this together in pretty short order. We had offered or gained an extension to get it due by, or to extend the due date to September 30th from the normal date of, I believe, June 30th. This year, we're going to shoot for the normal date. We were in the middle of COVID. And anyway, with that, I'll turn it over to Lyman.
Well, Thank you, John. And I just wanted to make sure that you can hear me okay, because sometimes sound's not good. Okay, great.
Loud and clear. Thank you.
Hey, Mayor Furman, Mayor Pro Tem Barney, and members of the Board of Trustees, I'd like to thank you for allowing me to do this presentation of the audit, primarily because I get to say things here that I can't say in the audit report. And so I'd like to do that first so that I don't forget, because that's what'll end up happening. We'll get sidetracked. And what I would like to say is that both Scott McClure, who you heard John mention was the CPA who came out and performed the field work. Both Scott and I recognize what an incredible asset you have in John Reeder. And so I wanted to point that out, that do whatever you can to keep that man in place, because he is an incredible asset for the town. And so we'll go straight into the audit. What I have to say in the audit is on pages 1 and pages 2. And on page 1, this is the firm's independent report, and these 2 pages are, this is the part that is mine, telling you what we did and giving you our opinion. The rest of the document is all the responsibility of the management of the town in terms of its preparation and its fair presentation. Now, we do assist in the preparation of the financial statements, and for good reason. Like John said, local government accounting is really confusing because there are 3 different bases of accounting being presented at the same time in the same document. And I had one board member recently ask at one of the presentations, why are there so many schedules? And that is the answer. There are so many schedules, number one, because of the number of funds that you have, and because of there are 3 different bases of accounting being presented. So our responsibility as auditors is to plan and perform the audit by looking at all of your procedures, your documentation, testing things, and then see how it all comes together in the financial statements and the notes, and then to express an opinion about the fair presentation. So the important, really important part of that then is at the top of page 2, the opinion. And for some people, what they prefer to hear is, I don't understand what this paragraph says, so how did we do? Well, you did great in terms of the control procedures that are in place, all of the accounting that has been done, and everything that led up to the presentation of these financial statements. And that opinion paragraph is the strongest of any kind of assurance that we are allowed to give. And the wording there is very, it's prescribed by the accounting profession. And that's where I can't throw in things like, hey, you know, John's really a great guy, you got to hang on to him. I can't put that in this letter, but that's why I wanted to be able to speak to you tonight. So let's go on from there. And I'm going to pause for a moment and ask, I've had cities and towns have different requirements for what kind of detail and how much they want me to go into. I've done a full hour presentation of the financial statements, and I've done 3 minutes. I'm guessing you want somewhere in between those two. Is that right?
Yes.
You don't want the hour, do you?
We're deferring to Mayor Furman and the board, of course, but I think a more high-level overview would be preferred.
Okay. So let me just give you something a little educational about the layout, because all the numbers are things that you have essentially seen, except for the first 2 financial statements. That is the statement of net position and the statement of activities. And these are statements that roll up everything about the town. And that first one is essentially, here's the stuff you have, that's in the assets. And here's the stuff you owe, that's in the liabilities. And when you essentially subtract the liabilities from the assets, that's the net position. So in very, very simple terms, this is at a point in time. This is the stuff you have. This is the stuff you owe. And then the next statement that's on page 4, the statement of activities. This is a really strange presentation of information for most people who have seen any kind of profit and loss statement. And that's because this is a local government. And what this statement is pointing out is that in all the functions and programs that you have, as you start over on the left, governmental activities in these different areas, your general government, public safety, etc. Here are the expenses for each of those areas. And here are the revenues that you get by charging services. And then you move down about halfway down the page. Now we get to throw in the general revenues, because you get to assess property tax. You get to get different other kinds of taxes that really don't go with charging for a service like you saw up above. So the concept here is that you can see, if you were running a business, when you look up above and you look at the net expense over revenue in those top lines, you can see you're losing money everywhere. Well, it's not a business, it's a government. You get to charge these other fees, these other taxes that kick back in, and then you can see that the change in net position is what your bottom line was for the year. And this particular presentation is also a very large overview of what the town accomplished. But it's also on a basis that it does not look at what happened in each of the funds. That's what comes next. So the next page is the balance sheet of the governmental funds. And the governmental funds are measured on a current resource basis. So when you look at that balance sheet, you start looking and saying, wait a minute, where's the fixed assets? Well, if there are no fixed assets maintained on this type of presentation, because it is just your current resources, the things that you currently have or have the rights to, and the current things that you have to pay.
Hey, Lyman, if I could interrupt just for a second, I'm trying to get a way to screen share this for the group. I don't know if you have the ability you have them up in front of you that you could do it. I just sent Lisa Branner, our Zoom wizard, to see if we could get this up on the screen to help the trustees and the mayor follow a little better.
Oh, I'm sorry. I assumed everyone had a copy in front of them.
So
There they are. There they
we're
are.
on page 5, Lisa, the balance sheet governmental funds at the top. Thank you. I apologize, everybody, for that. We were trying to get some technology together there.
Lisa, it's page 9 of the PDF.
You're there. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, so this is where I was talking about in the asset section. You see cash and you see receivables, and that's it for your assets. There's no, like I was saying, there's no capital assets, no buildings, no equipment, none of that, because this particular presentation is just your current resources. That's how it's presented for governmental funds. So let's see, if you move to the next page, Lisa, thank you. What you see is the same concept in the profit and loss statement, or in governmental accounting, statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balances for the governmental funds. The revenues and the expenditures, now breaking it out more by major fund categories. And all of this information came straight out of your accounting system. And so if you've been looking at, for example, the budgetary comparison on the revenues in the general fund and the revenues and expenditures, these should match essentially what you've been seeing all along. So that should not be any surprise at all. And okay, if you could move on to the next page, that's page 7. These are the proprietary funds. These are the business type funds where you charge a service, or you charge for a service. And the basis of accounting for these funds is more like a business type fund. So you have long-lived assets and the long-term debt. So here you see your cash and your accounts receivable and your inventories, but then you also see the capital assets. And this is why it's so confusing, and takes someone with a higher degree to be able to figure out why are they doing this? Well, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board decided that's how this has to be. So that's why. Next page is showing the revenues and expenditures, which you should already have seen and recognized that for the year, this essentially matches what you were showing for the revenues and the expenses for those 3 proprietary funds, those business type funds. And then the rest is essentially a bunch of notes that are required by the standards to say more details. So if you went on to page 11, it's going to tell you line by line what it is that the rules that we're all, and I'm sorry, when I say page 11, that's the page number of the actual document. It's 15. There you go. Yeah, 15 of the PDF. Now it goes into all the details about what are the rules and so on, that all of this is what's required. And the state of Colorado requires that you follow these rules and present all of these notes, which I am not going to go into unless you have a question on them. The remainder there's some other schedules that come after these notes. So the notes end on page 33 of the PDF. So if you go to page 34, and that leads into what's called the required supplementary information. These are the same pieces of information that you should have been seeing, or at least close to it, about the budgetary comparison, comparing what the actual is to your final budgets. And it goes through and does this by fund. So if you're really wondering, well, how did we do? And you haven't already seen that, this is where it's presented by fund, how you did your actuals to your budgets. And that's pretty much it in terms of what I really wanted to show you about the financial statements. And then there was a question about what about combining funds? What about loaning fund balance or reserves from one fund to another, or transferring from one fund to another? Is that correct, John?
Yes, sir. And I know we have additional research to do with Christine, but just maybe to go through the email, just the highlights of what the do's and don'ts are as far as, inter-fund allocations, inter-fund loans, crossing over from a governmental type fund to an enterprise or a business fund. I think our overall strategy was within the bounds of the rules of accounting and law. How do we create a little more flexibility where if one fund is building a bigger reserve that turns out not to be needed? Can we get that over to a fund that's a little more in need that would help us not raise rates or need to get financing for some reason? We just went through a tough, we thought was going to be a tough beginning of the year with COVID. Turned out not to be tough, but we were trying to get creative with some financing options to support town and create cash flow if we got to that position. We didn't, thankfully, but we thought we'd take the opportunity to learn through a question by Trustee Austin Lashley here, who just posed the question at a recent board meeting of, what kind of flexibility, what kind of fungibility do we have between funds, that if we needed to borrow from one to the other or allocate from one to the other. So that was the genesis, I believe, of the question. Expand if you'd like, Trustee Lashley, but I think that was the gist of your question and objective.
Yeah, just that exactly as Administrator Ryder pointed out, and then also just what kind of flexibility do we have in terms of maybe shifting some of these funds to be more flexible in the future. So like, for a good example, our water and sewer funds are separate. Is there ability to combine those into one fund so that if we need to, fund a new sewer plant, we can, be taking money from the water fund side of it instead of just the sewer fund. So kind of just that flexibility to kind of reallocate the funds in general too.
Right.
In my experience, practically in that happening in years past is, say you were building up a fund in the water or a reserve in the water fund for a big capital project that wound up being far less than you thought it was going to be, or you didn't need to make the extensive repairs or replacements that you thought. So now you've got an unused reserve basically, and the sewer fund, all of a sudden the plant needs to be upgraded 3 years earlier than you thought. That type of situation I have actually experienced, and it's useful at that point to make use of the funds that have a fund that doesn't need them anymore for the time being, and get them over to the fund that needs them.
Right. So there is actually a lot of flexibility for what you've described without going through and changing the funds, that is collapsing water and sewer together, or water, sewer, and refuse together, is just looking at what you've described. as an example, let's say that's what you did, that you had over the course of some years built up a reserve in water fund, had your little capital project, found out you still have quite a bit of reserve left over, and that you could really, the sewer fund could really use that. You have two choices. One is you just make a loan from one fund to another. That sits on the balance sheet just like any other loan. Another is to budget a transfer. And that budget can be, you can amend the budget. You could be doing this on the 15th of December for the current year to go ahead and transfer some portion of or all of the reserve from one fund to the other. And when you do a transfer, it is like an unforgivable or a forgivable loan. The money's just moved over and you never have to pay it back. So you have a choice between doing either of those two without collapsing funds together so that you can find a way of just sneaking some of that reserve. Yeah, you just do it above board. Say, the trustees got together and said, hey, we're going to go ahead and take that reserve out of capital projects and move it into general fund, or out of the sewer fund and move it into water, or whatever. So you have that flexibility. So the limitation is, what you don't want to do is have an unbudgeted transfer, and then that raises a flag with the state auditor. They're, you transferred $200,000 and it wasn't budgeted, and you have a responsibility to budget for those movements of funds. Like I said, you don't even have to budget if you're just going to do a loan from one fund to the other.
What would be the pros and cons of a loan versus a transfer?
Doing a loan is you don't have to budget for it. It can sit on your books for years as a water fund owes sewer fund $200,000, just sits on the balance sheet. There's no interest being charged unless that's what you decide to do, which I don't know why you would do that, but it would be an option. And let's see, years down the road, you could say, well, you know what, we're going to go ahead and budget that we forgive that loan. And then that's how you budget the transfer and it just wipes the loan off the books. So that's why a number of organizations have, when they've looked at it and said, at this point, we don't know if we want to have it as a loan that's paid back or it's just a transfer. So that's why you go with doing the loan, because it has that flexibility later. Now, in terms of the question of collapsing different funds into other funds, you certainly don't want to try to collapse water into general fund, because it is an enterprise. The water fund, the sewer fund, refuse funds, those are enterprises where they're exempt from anything to do with Tabor. And so there's no reserve that has to be held for emergencies, like you do with the governmental funds, like with general fund. So there are advantages to keep those business type, those proprietary funds separate from the governmental funds. I could see the point of, like, well, someone might ask, wait a minute, where's the library fund? We have a fund that's called the library fund. It's collapsed into the general fund. And you could do the same thing with some of your other governmental funds to go ahead and collapse them into the general fund as a standalone department, for example. advantage of that is it gives you a lot more flexibility. Once you have passed a budget, you can move money from one department to another without having to amend your budget. But if you decide you want to transfer funds from, let's say from Mullis Lake to general fund, well, if you didn't have it budgeted, then you would have to go through the whole gyration of what's required for you to amend the budget. You know, you have to advertise it, you have to open for public comment and go for the vote and all those other wickets where if Mullis Lake was just a department inside of general fund and then you decided you wanted to manipulate some of the budgeted expenditures, you can do that without amending the budget. So it actually gives you some more flexibility. You are required by state law to budget by fund, but you can do whatever you want inside that fund. So did that answer your questions on that?
Yeah, just that's a great recap. And then just one other quick, question in there. In order to kind of absorb those funds into, say you wanted to absorb the library fund into the general fund, just as an example here, how complicated is that process? And how involved is that?
It's no more complicated than the creation of a fund, which I don't know. I'd have to go back and look to see how the town has done that in the past, whether it was by resolution or ordinance or how that happened. But it's, like you don't have to go to the state for approval. You don't have to go out to the voters to get voter approval. So it's not that difficult. You just have to make Christine Stouter happy.
Okay, well, thank you so much. That is very informative and answers a lot of questions I've had for a long time.
Oh, good. Glad to hear it. Anything else for me?
Lyman,
thank you
so much.
Trustee Harper.
Yeah, I want to know how we can all get backdrops like this.
Yeah.
Am I the only one thinking this?
No, my
I
daughter.
want to be where you are.
And she's like, where is he?
Yeah, my brother from Columbus, Ohio, Lyman, just texted and said, how's your auditor in Hawaii?
Well, I have been stuck on this beach since April.
Huh.
And yeah, it's actually if you go into your setups in Zoom, if you've got the Zoom app that you're running, there's a place in the setups where you can go in and you can change your background. You have to have a pretty powerful video card for this animated one back here, but you can, I don't know, you could put the night sky. I mean, they just have all these different images. You can load in your own image from whatever you feel like, put a ski slope behind you.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, in all sincerity, thank you so much for the audit. Thank you so much for your hard work and for your kind words about Town Administrator Ryder. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
So if it's okay with you, I'm going to sign off.
Yes, sir. Go back to the beach.
Okay.
Have a great night. All right. Any other discussion on that? Great. Moving along to the approval of the consent agenda with the amendment to include accept the 2019 audit as previously noted. Trustee Wiegert.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda with the added 2019 audit as approved by Silverton Town Board Trustees.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you, Trustee Harper. Kelly, roll call, please.
Thank you, sir.
Trustee Barella,
Yes.
trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Weigert,
Yes.
trustee Bierma,
Yes.
trustee Lashley,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. Thank you. Moving along to staff reports. It did look like the action items noted have already been discussed this evening, but kicking it over to Administrator Ryder to talk about the proclamation or signage that you were talking about for the ice fire, and anything else notable that you'd like to discuss from staff reports.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So what I've done, I met up with the incident management team on Saturday morning and ran into Sheriff and then ran into Sheriff and Jim Donovan again on Sunday. And they just suggested two things if the board would be agreeable. One, they are all, a bunch of groups are putting together some kind of cool, short video, just saying thank you to everybody who participated in fighting that fire and doing such a great job for us. And then similar to what we did with the Great Divide, and I'm assembling a list from Jim and Sheriff, and I'll reach out to others. I know the local groups who are all involved, but I wanted to get the exact names and then maybe any primary individuals that would deserve naming, just as an official town proclamation, thanking them for the wonderful job that they did in fighting this fire and containing it. Kelly and I, in the last for the Great Divide, went so far as to present, the fire department and the EMS team and the chamber with the great work Deanne did down at the visitor center. Some of those we memorialized it just with a frame, kind of a plaque type of thing, putting the proclamation in it. It's not expensive, and we enjoy doing it, and it's just another extra step of thanks that we have often done in the past, just to show the gratitude of the great job done. And what I might do is, we'll create the proclamation. It'll have all the names in it. We'll let you know which ones we would want to frame, and it's going to be less than a few $100s. So just making sure we might have clearance for something like that, and to prepare you would adopt or approve a proclamation making that official and in-town record, thanking the incredible team that fought the fire. I don't think it needs any motion or approval. I'll just proceed unless somebody jumped through the screen and said, "What are you doing?" On to staff reports. Sorry, mine was late, obviously. Big news out of mine was that we were awarded the Regional Economic Development Initiative grant for $85,000. That's a one I put in together in conjunction with Laura Lewis with Region 9 and her staff. Again, many thanks to them for helping do a bunch of the grunt work to get the verbiage in, and we just polished her off. And we're going to use that money in a kind of quasi to be determined. San Juan Development Association needs some type of leadership, executive director. We're now running it with the board. Mel Russick is moved on after doing a job for several years for the Development Association. We've been thinking about that board has been retooling its mission given the aftermath or the during math, I guess we'd say, of COVID and economic development and diversified economic development and new types of economic development really rising to the forefront I think I heard you, Trustee Lashley, speak to that tonight in your candidate forum. As many of the candidates did, about, okay, we're at a crossroads again. We weathered a crisis, or we're continuing to weather it, but diversified economy, year-round economy. Who are they? What are they? What are the new businesses we could attract? Location neutral, the whole 9 yards. So anyway, San Juan Development Association, in the retooling of its mission to accomplish and help the town and county accomplish those objectives and assist local businesses, needs leadership. We've attained this grant to fund that leadership. I'll be reporting back to you here in the coming weeks. We need to have a number of strategy sessions. Is it an employee of San Juan Development, a single person? Is it a contracted employee? Is it a combination? Is it a potential town San Juan Development type sharing of resources? Anyway, we want to tool something up here using this money to give that group leadership to go really boots on the ground, start successfully accomplishing some important objectives. One thing is, who's going to go contact the businesses that it didn't open this summer? And where are they? Are they still in Arizona and warm places where they go? What do we need to do to encourage them to come back? How do we share the success story that happened here in the summer? What are they going to do with the businesses if they don't intend to come back? How do we fill some of the vacant space on Main Street and Blair Street? So anyway, to some of the top level objectives that San Juan Development Association has been successful doing in the past. They kind of switched into assistance for crisis management, starting with Gold King, then 416, and Too Much Snow. So we want to get it back to its original root mission, get a good leadership structure in there and get going. Yes, I'd like to absolutely thank all the town staff in my absence. It just proves what a unbelievable, capable, flexible, think on their feet type of group we have here. Getting a big team organized in town hall. I know there was ancillary things, Lisa Branner helping out on the Zoom technology communication front. Kelly setting up upstairs, getting everybody organized upstairs, making a lot of friends up there that they kept offering her free food. But it was also a show of hospitality. It was a show of support. It was a show of staff's capabilities, and I thank them all for that. I wanted to point out, in Kelly's growing education, she's going out or is about to go out and learn how to do meter readings with John Seitz and his group, so that, the meter readings, that's where water billings and sewer billings, that's where it all starts. When John's not here, this is another of the building cross-training. What do we do when people are missing or taking vacation? How do we accomplish the goals? So Kelly's taking it upon herself. She knows what the meter readings look like. She just hasn't been out to actually obtain them and understand some of the challenges there. So she's going to go out with that group and learn how to read meters, so that in the absence of one of the PW folks, we've got a backup. John Seitz, I would note that his most important, they are doing just really right near here, some replacement of severely damaged sewer main sections that turned up. This turned up, unfortunately, I think, in Austin's ceiling in his bathroom when they were doing the high pressure cleaning. Through that, they couldn't get the pressure washer through certain sections that were so clogged. Anyway, those are being repaired. Unexpected, but we should be able to keep it within budget. That's where our PW crew comes in and does a great job, because they self-perform this work. All they need to do is buy materials, or a lot of times we have the materials already inventoried, and they get out there with the machines and the wading boots and can self-perform that work within a budgeted town expense, which is wonderful. To call a contractor in to do that type of work is sometimes tens of thousands of dollars. So kudos to those guys. As you've all seen, Lisa Branner went nuclear with MailChimp and getting it set up. So special thanks to her. Once again, probably no small task and underappreciated, but we think this is going to create yet another platform of communication. The town seemed to want it. The town's about to get it in a new form, and hopefully a form that's pretty easy. The way it's being set up is pretty cool. And that, there'll be some initial rounds of blasts. Here's this new thing, here's how it works. But what I really love about it is individuals can toggle which information they want to receive. So if once it gets up and working and works as advertised, and I'm sure it will with Lisa doing the grit work on it, it'll be a pretty cool way. Because I for one, last week monitoring Ice Lake or the ice fire, I'm getting 5 of the same emails of the same information every time they were sending out a blast. I mean, this is obviously no critic. We'd rather have more than less, or certainly more than none, but it gets confusing. I mean, I get 4 emails and a nixle every time, something was changing with the ice fire. And I'm not the most technically savvy, but I started deleting 4 before I read the 5th. And I wound up deleting one of the more important ones somehow, some way, that was listing out all the preparedness needs. But, I think the MailChimp used properly, and, if we got to go out and train people in their homes, someone who's just, I'm sorry, Lisa, I'll do that. It could be a really cool tool where they toggle the information they want, they get it on email, it becomes stable. It eliminates yet another layer of folks not being able to, or thinking that they can't get to town information. So kudos on that. Facilities and parks. Okay, everybody simultaneously cross your fingers and toes. The Great Outdoors application for the Columbine Park project prepared. Bulk of the work done by Todd is in. We've noted that is our second submission for that grant, so that they make sure, even though the grant program switched slightly, well, not so slightly, but it switched from last year to this year, GoCo gives credit to those who keep applying. So we also made sure that they knew this was essentially our second application. But the other good news of that grant is, instead of having to wait till March under the old one, we'll find out middle of November. So, literally here in about 3 weeks, we'll find out if we were successful with that. That's a $525,000 upgrade to Columbine Park. If you'd like, I didn't put it on here, we can do a presentation at some, future soon board meeting, just to give you a sense again of what that renovation and upgrade and tear out looks like. If we can do it, it's a major step and a cool project. I know $500,000 sounds like a lot of money, but it's really not for the just improvement and aesthetic and look and service that we will get out of that upgraded facility with this plan. The gang is working on the winter operation plan. Colorado ski guidelines for how to operate your ski area and all of its various facilities in these COVID times has come out. And so the team is working on how to marry our operation up to those guidelines. It's going to be tough. But we will have something here shortly, I believe, and we'll present to the town and let you know what we propose to do and see what it looks like. That's all I have in staff reports, and would entertain any questions.
Thank you, Trustee Barella.
I just had a question for Lisa. At the very last meeting, she said that was not within her scope because she had too much on her plate. So I was wondering what freed up for her in order to start getting this MailChimp platform done.
If I may respond to that, I never said it was not within my scope. I said that I had much on my plate.
That's what I said. You had too much on your plate. So I said, what cleared up for you that you were able to get into this?
We had a wildfire on our hands, and I put other work on hold because crisis management became more important.
This was 2 weeks ago. I was just asking what you cleared off your plate, to be clear about my statement, that allowed you to get back in and start the MailChimp? That's what I asked, because it was 2 weeks ago at the meeting that you said it was too
Lisa,
much.
without responding, I think these questions should be directed to Administrator Ryder. Administrator Ryder, would you like to respond to Trustee Barilla?
Obviously Lisa was able to clear off whatever was the current priority and make this the top priority and get it up very quickly. As to the specifics of what you were able to clear off, I'm sure somebody's waiting for something at this point after having to postpone it to put the MailChimp as the top priority.
Well, that's what I was asking, because I was going to tell her we appreciate the fact that she cleared her schedule to get this done. I was not aware it was going to be coming out that soon, and I did send a reply back to her because I was very confused on what was happening, because we were told she had too much on her plate to get to it right away. So thank you. Back to what I was going to originally say. Thank you. I do want to speak to you directly because I'm not quite understanding exactly how it's going to work for our packets for the future as well, because we are trustees versus members of the general public. And I want to know from you, we can do it separately on the phone, in order to make sure I mark what I need to mark, because I am not familiar with this platform. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add, I'm happy to assist any trustees who have questions about the MailChimp platform with that, same as I did when we ramped up with Zoom. So thank you, Trustee Barilla.
Anything else on staff reports?
All right. Thank you very much. Moving along to committee reports. I'll kick off, or unless Administrator Ryder, it looked like you were about to.
Yeah, you're probably going to this, maybe going to the same place. I was just going to say we had a very productive ordinance, personnel, and communication committee meeting regarding the vacation rental revisions to that ordinance. It actually it was one of the more, I don't know if I'd say fun or entertaining, that may be a little strong committee, but it was certainly one of the more interesting ones in that just great questions were brought up, some things to think about that didn't really change the body of that particular ordinance, but it really gave us a nod to the future of what, just what it, as things change in the residential unit, apartment unit, things that might get added as new product, how we would deal with these and could they be vacation rentals. But I don't know, just as a side note, we've got the ordinance in pretty good shape. We're going to send it to the Planning Commission tomorrow. Committee members, we're going to bring up ask the Planning Commission for just their thoughts on what to do in the BP zone with the distance, the 100-foot setback requirement. Just to see what they have to say about that. I know we talked about it and thought the 100 feet in there was, maybe not going to be prudent in that zone, and just see what thoughts they may have. So just to let you know, but that will be on the Planning Commission tomorrow evening. Both Director Adair and I will be attending, but just appreciated the discussion and ancillary discussions that came out of the committee working on the VRB ordinance. So I hope you guys share the same experience in some of the committees you're working on. That one was fruitful in ways that, we probably didn't anticipate.
Thank you. Yeah, I would just add for context to anyone watching on YouTube or Zoom that the process so far for this has been staff is meeting once a week with respect to each of the revisions. Administrator Ryder is working with Planner Adair to determine the priority of which code provisions are getting addressed in what order. And then once they get to a point that they're ready for presentation, they come in front of the ordinance committee. Ordinance committee has a discussion, gives feedback, staff considers. Then it gets presented to the planning commission. Planning commission reviews, gives feedback, goes back to staff. And then once that's all done, then there's a nicely dialed in version that comes in front of this board of trustees to approve the revisions. So that's the process they're following, and they're doing a really good job knocking out some pretty important code provision updates. Any other committee reports? Trustee Harper?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, thanks, Mayor Shane. I just wanted to say that was one of the better meetings I've been a part of thus far. You taking notes, you being the chair, Ryder, Molly, myself. We had Lisa Adair on the Zoom. And I thought it was not only.
Don't forget Mr. McDougall. He also.
Oh, that's right. We had Bill Mack sitting there.
You had Billy Mack there.
Not only was it informative, we were asking good questions, but just being able to sit there and talk to one another and be able to read each other and understand that, I thought it was really good. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Barella.
Yeah, to reiterate, we've got what Mr. McDougall said. We've got other municipalities looking at what we have already done for VRBO regulations because they did not put any into place. And to say that the work that was done previously was done within a very good scope to make sure that we covered most of the bases that we could cover, made sure we were protecting the neighborhoods, because if you've noticed that there are articles coming out of Durango that are trying to now reduce the numbers so that way they don't change the neighborhoods dramatically because they didn't have a cap on it before. So all previous work needs to be acknowledged as well as being very well thought out and very well planned. And yes, thank you to the committee moving forward so that we do have potentially even better regulations moving forward. So we have a better handle on it, I would say right now, than probably 60% of the small communities around this area. So good job, staff and committee. Thank you.
Just as one minor, we figured out a way to hybrid Zoom and meet live safely. So we had 3 or 4 of us upstairs at the big table, the chamber table, whatever, the trustee table. Then we just had a simple computer off on one table. And in this small case, at least Adair participated via Zoom. We had public participating via Zoom that we could see. So in this smaller committee setting, we didn't violate any COVID rules. And, 4 of us were there live. And if you guys can, I know some of the committees are bigger and it's not going to be possible, but I guess as a suggestion, let me know. We'll figure out how to get you distance and set up so that you could, some of you can be live, because I think that also contributed to the just, better atmosphere and fostered really great discussion. But if anybody's got a smaller committee, because we can only fit so many people up there, let me know and we'll show you how we did it.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Nice, guys. That sounds great. I also wanted to note that John Poole sent us an email with an article in the New York Times about vacation rentals. That was a great read. If you haven't read it yet, it's worth the time. My Kendall update is that the committee met last week, which means we will not meet tomorrow. We will meet next week at 3 o'clock. It was just a really, just a working meeting to continue to revise and prepare considerations that Sue Morris began, and we're working to polish those before they're, we want them to just be accurate and reflective of the work that we're doing. And it sounds like it's possible the trustees will get that for the November 9th meeting. But then we had the fire, so that we'll have to confirm that.
Thank you. Any other committee reports? Great. Moving along to trustee reports. Anything to note? I have one. in my casual perusing of the town code, I came across section 2270, which says that we transition our meeting time from October through April from 7 o'clock to 6:30. It's my understanding that the former iteration of the board voted on keeping it consistent at 7. And I'm not sure if that's formally adopted in an ordinance. And I have a feeling Trustee Barella is going to fill that knowledge void in. So just wanted to flag that and then ask this board what we wanted to do. Trustee Barella.
Yes, that was rescinded. This was a problem with what we were dealing with previously, is a lot of things were not codified after they were changed or moved. So that did get codified, but the recension of it did not. We voted, Austin and Jess should remember, we voted to put it back to 7 o'clock all the time, and it was done in an ordinance.
Great. So I guess Administrator Ryder, clearly not urgent, but noting that section 2270 of our code is out of date. And then I guess just asking this board, similarly, would we like to keep the meeting time at 7, or do we want to consider it an earlier time in the winter? Trustee Wiegert?
It doesn't matter now because we're all Zooming, but it is etched in stone on the front of the town hall. Meeting times at 7 o'clock.
Trustee Lashley?
I know it says the second and fourth Tuesday. I didn't, does it say the time? Okay.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
I think we discussed previously that is a good reason, and then also just the consistency of having our meetings at the same time as a means of just making sure that awareness of our times and meetings was clear to members of the public.
That all sounds like very good reasons to keep it at 7. Thank you.
Well, it would literally take an act of Congress to change the plaque on the front of town hall, so that I could start the process, but that may take 30 years. I'm glad we're keeping it at 7.
Any other trustee reports? All right, thank you. So moving along to section 9, continued business. Discussion regarding continuation of ordinance 2020-04 regarding extended premises. I'm guessing.
Mayor, sorry to interrupt. I saw Trustee
please.
Barella put her hand up.
Oh, Trustee Barella, please go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say that we were invited to go, and Trustee Harper and myself were invited to go to the morning debriefings during the ice fire with all of the incident command teams, and what an amazing opportunity that was to see how structured they were, how those guys are on it. They know exactly what they're doing. I had a chance to have the drone operators in my business, and the way that they were talking about what they did, and just the whole structure of how these guys came in, how amazing. They're so cohesive. They know exactly what to do. That chain of command is amazing, beautifully built in. And it was really quite an eye-opener to see how the boots on the ground work in comparison to what you hear just in a quick press release. So to actually see what they actually talk about and how they move forward and progress was pretty exciting. So I don't know if Mr. Harper would like to say anything else about that, but we would like to thank those that invited us to come along. Thank you.
I can if you'd like. PIO of the Forest Service, Andy Lyon, invited me back Sunday. So I was at the 7:30 a.m. Sunday morning briefing, and then at the 10 o'clock Sunday morning briefing. And what I enjoyed most about that was watching all the agencies regional, state, federal, all working together to solve this problem for us. And I think I sent out an email just internal to the board this morning. Just we once again just show the resiliency of our community and everyone pulling together. And I love it. It's what we do. It's why we all decided to run in the first place, to give back. And it was neat to see folks from all different sectors of our community and walks of life coming together for this common cause. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Continued business. Bump outs. Is it time? What say you?
Administrator
Trustee Lashley.
Oh,
sorry.
I defer to Trustee Lashley.
Thank you. I say that our recent span of weather is to be short-lived. Weather looks to return to warmer weather for the next week, possibly two. So I think taking away the bump outs now is probably a little premature again, but willing to hear what the rest of the board thinks.
Trustee Harper.
I have a question for Trustee Lashley and Trustee Barella. You guys are directly affected by these bump outs. What do you say? Keep them up for another couple of weeks?
Trustee Barella.
My last day open is the 31st, and then we always take a 2-week hiatus. This week I have to take a 3-week hiatus, or this year I have to take a 3-week hiatus, and just to have some deferred maintenance finished inside the building. So I'm going to be pulling mine on November 1st, 31st anyway. But if Trustee Lashley still needs it, then by all means, we should keep it as long as we don't have to worry about the heavy equipment down Main Street. That's my largest concern going into winter, is that we don't get them out soon enough when we've got a 2-foot storm. So that's where I stand. So thank you.
I know this wasn't intended, but just want to clarify for public perception that the decision will have to do with all of the businesses that benefit from the bump outs and not just Trustee Lashley's and Trustee Barella's.
Well, who else has got them out left? Does anybody know? Because I believe that our two businesses, two on Main, there might be one on Blair. I'm not sure.
I might suggest that I think the ordinance has latitude to do this, that if you're ready to take them out, we'll come and take them out for you. And if you want to leave them, so I say we leave the ordinance open per Trustee Lashley's suggestion. But if a business is closing like yours, Trustee Barella, or someone just doesn't feel the need for them, just give Town Hall a ring and we'll come and get them at your leisure while it's still open, while the ordinance is still live.
Trustee Lashley had his hand up, and then Trustee Barella, and then I saw Kelly turned her video on. I'm guessing she's going to tell us who still has bump outs. So Trustee Lashley, do you want to go first?
Sure. Just from our perspective too, if we do get a heavy snowstorm, or we're predicted to get a heavy snowstorm, I think it would take us all of 10 minutes to move it and take it down. So it wouldn't be a inconvenience, I don't believe, to Public Works at this point. But it looks kind of like fair weather is to return for the next couple weeks.
Trustee Barella?
I was going to say I'd like to hear from Kelly.
Great. Kelly?
It's Shady Lady's the only other one over on Blair that has bump out still.
Thank you. Administrator Ryder, no issues with the crews for snow removal or anything like that for a storm this small?
No.
Trustee Barella?
So my question is into the future. Is this something that we are considering as a board bringing back for next summer? I did have the pleasure of talking to an actuary who was compiling data for a group of hospitals, and she said that we need to expect to have a lot of these regulations still into place all the way through to next year. Don't quote her on that because she just compiles data for hospitals in reference to this. But I think even after COVID is over, I think it was quite an amazing thing to see that on the street. It had a very different feel to it. I don't know what the rest of the board feels about it for the future, but I'd like to be able to see it at least through next summer if possible. So thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Lashley.
I completely agree with what you just said, Trustee Barella, but I think when we have that discussion, we need to have it publicly noticed and agenda item on our meetings, so that way if there's public comment related to it, we can field those questions from the public.
Oh, of course, but I'm just trying to get a feeling of this board if they thought it was a useful tool this summer and potentially with COVID by regulations for next summer.
What I might suggest to get us there is at some point we addend, when we decide to shut it down this year for good, snow's finally right, that we create maybe an addendum to the ordinance that, we have a shut date and a potential open date. The Polis was encouraging him doing all winter. I don't think that's practical here, obviously, but we can leave the ordinance as is in place and just maybe amend it to have a trustee decision to stop it for the year and a trustee decision to make it available the following year, and just kind of roll, because I heard absolutely zero negative about the bump outs and that they were awesome. And I'm sitting on a grant application for next year that I'll apply for closer to reopening if we're going to ultimately decide to keep doing this. That it's a $50,000 grant that's earmarked. Almost one of the objectives is specifically for the bump outs and that, and so we could fund some of the really cool stuff that you saw down in Durango, and take another step up in just the aesthetic and what they look like and people enjoying them, and actually if we were successful in a grant, have some money to help the businesses buy that stuff. So I don't know if I think our next decision is just when to say, okay, no matter what, we're going to have to come and get them and close it down for the winter. And then we'll figure out an addendum. You guys set the shut date and the open date every year and leave the original ordinance in place. Because everything I heard, it was a roaring success and should continue, or should be considered at least for continuation beyond the COVID situation.
I think that all sounds great. Why don't we add for the next meeting in addition to discussion regarding continuation, a general discussion about future use of this ordinance, so that, like Trustee Lashley suggested, there's notice to the public and the ability to comment on that issue in connection with our discussion. Cool. So no action needed this evening.
No action needed.
Great. All right, back to you, Administrator Ryder, on a Silverton Lakes update.
Okay, I have 3 things to update you on. Number 1, as you know, after the second reading of the ordinance, it needs 30 days published. It passed that without any additional public comment. So we recorded the necessary documents. The document part of it is officially closed. They've been, Town Hall has a copy of the recorded documents. Obviously the clerk and recorder at the county and the Silverton Lakes folks. So that part of it is closed. Paul Kosnick talked to Kyle over at Cottonwoods, and the Army Corps is close to a final approval of the mitigation plan for the wetlands that the Heinbaugh's VR agreements will be responsible for. He has seen no indication that there'll be any change to the mitigation plan submitted, and looking forward. The Army Corps, takes some time to get these things through their approval protocols, but is expecting an answer soon of final approval. There was some talk about, future town responsibility and liability. And as Paul and I have tossed it around, both in the past and recently, we probably have an obligation, and I've got to think about this for the budget and our signage requirements, but to identify where our property starts and ends with some kind of reasonable signage program. The signage program will also serve, as a reminder and a warning, do not enter the wetland areas. So we'll need to, I'll talk to sites, or this might be on me to figure out a way without spending a gazillion dollars in survey costs to, kind of delineate key areas where there's vehicle traffic, there could be encroachment potential, and, get that on some kind of map for spring and create a signage package that would just identify, Silverton Lake property, wetland, something or another, do not enter, warning for fine, something like that. So there's a little bit of work to do there, but, and that'll help mitigate, the liability of someone damaging them that we don't know. We have indemnity agreements with Silverton Lakes. It's just if we don't catch somebody, it potentially falls back to town. So gonna have to work on that here and probably get something on the ground or some kind of indication while there's still not that much snow. Figure out what we're dealing with here as far as identification of, here's our, now you're on town property, do not enter, wetland protection, et cetera, et cetera.
Trustee Bennett.
I think that's absolutely the right course of action to take from here on forward, because we don't want to get in trouble the same way, having similar issues, people going off-road. I did observe a group of children, don't know if they were local or not, actually riding their bikes in the dead fin one time this summer. So that is definitely going to be an issue going forward. So we need to make sure that we are covered on all of our bases and we don't face further liability from owning the wetlands.
I have also spoken to the Heinbaugh directly and just said, we're on the same team here, and we need your eyes on the ground as well. We do not want to go through this again. So, and they are in agreement, that enforcement and observation and keeping people out of wetland areas is of paramount importance down there.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions? Great. Well, with that, we move to public comment. This is our second public comment of the evening. If any of our participants, if any of our attendees would like to speak, please click raise hand at the bottom of your screen and we'll promote you to panelist. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to enter executive session. Trustee Lashley.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to enter executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters regarding the town administrator's duties pursuant to CRS section 24-6-4024FL.
I believe it's an aye.
Oh, aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, looks unanimous. So for those listening, we'll be going into an executive session, which is not open to the public. So if everyone would voluntarily please leave the Zoom room, that would be very helpful. If we have to kick you out, then we have to set up a new Zoom for the town because you're permanently kicked out. So thank you very much for joining. If you would like to join back, all we'll be doing after the executive session is making a motion to adjourn. But you would be welcome to rejoin the Zoom meeting at the very end. For the trustees on here, it's 9:35. Let's take our usual 5-minute break. Attorney Kosnick's going to join us, and I'll see you all at 9:40. Thank you.